Hey guys, my name is Chantel. Welcome back to my channel and thanks for hanging out with me today. So today we are going to talk about Idolish7 Third Beat episode 20. So this episode honestly was pretty intense. We got a lot of information about Riku and just so much stuff was happening and I was getting emotional throughout the whole episode, but that's to be expected with Idolish7 this season. Anyways, you guys, let's go ahead and dive into this week's episode. So this episode basically starts off with Anasanagi putting up the big old giant trigger poster so people know that that's where they're performing and stuff. And as she's doing that, she overhears people talking down on Trigger, how they haven't been appearing on TV as much and how they've fallen down and just all these things about Trigger that we already know. And Anasanagi obviously can't help but feel bad for the boys, and I'm sure she wishes she could do more and wishes that they wouldn't have to experience these hardships, but here they are now and all they can do is just make do with the situation and try to turn it into an opportunity. And surely enough, we get to see the Trigger boys. They are preparing to go up on stage and sing as street performers for the first time. And Gaku obviously looks very, very much worried about what's going to happen in the outcome, especially since it's raining. But thankfully, Ryonosuke and Ten, say some encouraging words, especially Ten. Ten ends up saying what Riku had told him back in season 1, which I thought was so sweet and made me really emotional. How back then in season 1, Ten said that he will continue singing as long as he has allies and weapons, and now this is true for Ten. Now he's the one in this situation. He's the one who has to fight to be on stage, And the thing that really got me was when Ten called him his rival, and I'm just like, oh, like y'all are hitting me right in the feels. But just the way that Ten is saying this so sweetly and softly, and just the smile on his face, I'm just like, oh, like, gosh dang it. Like, y'all are out to get me today with this episode. And Gaku also mentions how he never wanted his fans to see them as like fallen rainbows, but now they're going to show them that, rainbows pretty much never fade and they will always come back, and, stuff like that. So the boys are pretty much pumped, and again, Anasanagi is really happy to hear that the boys are doing okay despite the situation and the circumstances. To which we actually get to see Riku. He's in the car and he notices the Trigger poster, and of course, Riku being Riku has to jump out of the car and just rush to where Trigger is. And of course, Tsumugi, worried about Riku, she goes and chases after him. So they are basically there to watch Trigger and see them perform. And of course, seeing Riku's expression, I can't help but see and notice that he's obviously worried for his twin brother and how he's feeling. And we do get to hear what Riku is thinking in this moment and stuff, and just all the feelings that he's feeling right now. But anyway, you guys, I was actually expecting Trigger to perform Daybreak Interlude just because, again, we see these scenes in Daybreak Interlude music's video, but surprise, surprise, it's not it. We actually get to hear the first song that we see them perform back in season 1, which is Secret Night. And it just hits me even harder because a lot of people also noticed that this was their first performance that we get to see, and now it's circling back to, this moment where they're at their lowest. In season 1, they were at their highest, so it's kind of like, ooh. And it's also the same thing with Idolish7. They are at their highest currently, but back in season 1, they were just starting out. They were baby birds and just trying to get through this whole thing as much as they could. So it's just very funny to see how, Ten and Riku's positions have switched within a year's time, which is crazy to see, but also very, very sad to see, especially because, like I said, this is Trigger. Nobody expected this from Trigger, and here they are, it's sad, but again, we know Trigger's gonna pull along and they're gonna be okay. That's what I keep telling myself. I'm like, they're gonna be okay. It's fine. They just gotta go through these hardships, but it's hard seeing your boys go through these hardships. Anyways, you guys, so the rest of the groups are actually watching Trigger perform, which is Rivale and the rest of Idolish7 are watching them, and they're all like huddling together watching them and are really excited for them and happy for them that they're able to sing again. And of course, Momo is he's beyond excited for them and happy that they're continuing their fight. And Yuki actually notices that the fans are crying, and I love that Momo replies that, well, yeah, they're crying tears of joy because they know it's not over. And Yuki replies with, just like you that day, and I'm just like, stop. Like, that got me. It completely caught me off guard, and also just, it just made me emotional. Like, even now, like, thinking about that scene makes me want to cry again. Because we saw firsthand how Momo felt when he thought Rivale was going to end and how hard he tried to get Rivale to start over again. Just, there goes the tears. Oh, fuck. Damn it. It's just, like, we're basically seeing all these things that other groups have gone, but they're happening to Trigger now. And it's crazy. It's so crazy to see, because these groups, it's not like they were at their highest. They were barely performing there, or barely starting up or getting an opportunity. And now with, and then suddenly they had to start over or something. But with Trigger, it's like they went from their highest of high to now all the way down low. So yeah, anyway, I think it's definitely safe to say that Momo definitely understands the fans, the way that the Trigger fans are, what they're feeling right now the most. He can probably relate the most, for sure. Anyway, so we actually shift to Yamato, Mitsuki, and Nagi, and they're all together watching Trigger. And Yamato is obviously worried for Trigger and hopes that there's no problems for them. And Mitsuki says, like, even if there are problems, they always turn them into opportunities. Like, we've seen that happen time and time again with them. He also ends up telling Nagi how it's gonna be the same thing with him, that as long as he continues singing, Haruki will come to him and they'll meet again. And the next thing that Yamato says, like, kind of has me scared, but also made me a little like, oh, but also like, wait a minute, had me thinking a little bit, maybe reading into it too much. But the fact that Yamato said that there's gonna be a happy ending waiting for Nagi, and even if there isn't, that they will create one for him, which kind of makes me think, like, because again, this is Idolish7, they like to foreshadow things, so I'm just like, I really hope you didn't just jinx everything, Yamato, because I swear to God, if something happens, I'm gonna lose it. I don't know what's gonna happen, but it's just, yeah, like, I can't help but be like, wait a minute. Anyway, you guys, so the Trigger actually ends up finishing Secret Night, and obviously the fans want more to hear them sing again. And the boys have to tell him, like, hey, like, this is it. We're sorry. This is all we can do right now, but we'll be back again. And Ryunosuke actually ends up apologizing for making them worried, anxious, and sad. And that he's sorry that they couldn't make them smile during these hard times. Which I was just like, oh, like, it made me sad, because this whole thing started because of the whole scandal with him and Sumire, but it sucks. And I'm sure, like, again, I'm sure Ryunosuke feels terrible, like, really, really bad, that he was basically, like, the domino effect into all of this. But, like, it's not like he could have expected it. He was just trying to be nice and kind, like he always was, but someone just took advantage of that, and that was horrible. This is all on Sumire too. And this is actually when things get really, really emotional. And that's when Ten says that he's going to continue, that they'll basically be continuing on and keep singing, and he thanks the fans, but he ends up breaking down and crying, which is honestly surprising, because we know Ten to be someone who always keeps his composure, always keeps his true feelings hidden, so the fans won't see that or get in the way of the fans' happiness. But because of the circumstances and everything, and he probably felt just as anxious as everybody else. And because he loves his fans really, really dearly, like truly so much, that he couldn't help but break down and cry. Because to 10, like, all of this is just an unknown path. He's never experienced these hardships and stuff like that. He's had hardships, of course, but it's never been like this intense and stuff where he didn't know if there was going to be a place for him to sing again. So yeah, it was surprising to see that, and it just made me cry too. And again, I felt like I've been saying this lately, but the more we get to see Trigger in these episodes, the more I really do appreciate 10 as a character, and I have grown to love him a lot. So, which is very surprising for me, because I was like, ugh, 10 before, but now I'm just like, 10. You know? I don't know if anyone else has felt that way, where they were kind of like, ugh, about 10, but now they're just like crying in the corner, wanting to hug and protect him, because that's how I felt. That's how I'm feeling right now. And as all this is happening, we actually get to hear Riku's monologue and what he's thinking right now. He's obviously surprised to see his brother cry, and he starts to say how he's always wondered how 10 has been feeling this whole time, and how hearing the fans' voices have probably hurt him. And he remembers how someone told him it was stupid to seek the opinions of fans and be hurt by them. So this ends up making Riku question himself and wonder, then who does he sing for if the fans are going to betray him like this someday, or things are going to end up like this? But then the way that he sees 10 and everything that he's saying makes him realize, like, oh, like, he doesn't hate anyone and he's never hated me. It's just that he really, really, truly loves his fans so deeply, and everyone around him. To which Riku ends up saying how his brother must have felt terrible for hurting his fans, and he was so much prepared to receive all this negativity, and he was just preparing himself and ready for it. But instead he was received with like a positive response, which was probably overwhelming for 10. And he also ends up realizing that people are always pushing themselves for other people's happinesses. And this, again, makes Riku feel overwhelmed. So when Riku starts saying this, I'm just like, uh-oh, don't tell me that this is going to cause something in Riku to change or snap. You know, like, I was just a little bit worried with Riku, because I feel like he, you know, seeing his brother like this is probably giving him a little bit of anxiety. And now he's questioning, why am I singing? Who do I sing for? What is the reason for singing if people are gonna end up like this someday, or if I'm gonna end up like my brother one day? I think it's just like an unknown territory, and he's just a little bit afraid. But I think seeing 10 as well, like the way that he's responding to it, makes him just hope for a good future. After this, we actually get to skip over to Iori, and he's basically still trying to figure out what Kujo meant about Riku being a monster, but also because Riku has been skyrocketing in popularity. So he's trying to figure out, what is it about Riku that's making people fall in love with him or cheer him on? Like, what is it? Like, you can obviously tell that Iori is like almost there, but he just can't quite put his finger on it. And as he's trying to figure this out, Riku actually walks in, and this is also something that I've noticed, is that Riku is actually in the dark as he's talking to Iori, and Iori is in the light. And I was like, that's interesting, and I know that it symbolizes something. Do I know what it is? Not really, but I can take a guess of what it is. And I have a feeling it probably has to do with, you know, Kujo calling Riku a monster, and maybe it's because he's oblivious and doesn't know the full scope of the situation and seriousnesses of what's happening with him and the change that's happening. Because Riku even says himself as he's talking to Iori that he doesn't understand why people are saying that he's changed, even though he feels like he hasn't changed at all. Like, he knows on the inside he hasn't changed. So he doesn't quite understand why people are saying, oh, you've kind of changed a little bit, especially when it comes from his fans. And he does end up mentioning how both him and 10 haven't changed at all, but the voices around him have. So he's like kind of wondering to himself, like, what's going on? And Iori obviously doesn't have an answer for him, but he ends up whispering, that he promises that he's going to make him a superstar and not to go anywhere where he can't reach him. So that's also another thing that I was like, maybe that's what it symbolizes, is that Riku is going somewhere where Iori can't reach at the moment. With Iori, I feel like he's just more concerned for Riku, if anything, and what's going to happen, because this is all unknown territory, and he definitely cares for Riku a lot and wants to see him succeed. So I'm sure that he's worried about Riku and is hoping that, nothing bad happens to him. So yeah, things are getting intense, and it's a little sad. And also another imagery that I really noticed in this episode was when Riku looks out the window and he says Ten's name and we see a falling star. I'm like, y'all, why y'all have to do that to me? Because I feel like that falling star represents right now, like, the situation that Ten is going through. So it's just like, god damn it, It's just the little things like that that make this episode just so unique and interesting, and it's so good. It's, again, one of the reasons why I love Idolish7. The imagery, the symbolism, everything in it. It's just, everything has meaning, no matter how little it might be. The smallest detail has a meaning behind it, which to me just goes to show, like, the staff and everyone working on Idolish7 puts a lot of care and thought into it, but also wants to clue us in on what's gonna happen next too. Anyways, you guys, so Idolish7 actually ends up singing Perfection Gimmick at their concert, so that's where we start off after this. And during this whole time that they're singing Perfection Gimmick, Riku again starts to think about why is it that they haven't changed, but their situations and surroundings have for him and Ten, and how, like, the sights and smiles of the fans are really encouraging, but they're also very, very fleeting and can change instantly. So this makes actually Riku, from the looks of it, very anxious and overwhelmed. And he obviously is experiencing all these different emotions, and he just can't contain them or handle it in a good way just yet. So he ends up breaking a little bit on stage because he just feels overwhelmed by the situation that his brother is going through and everything. And he has all these questions and anxiety. So yeah, so obviously he's gonna break. And I love that Iori, when he sees that something's happening with Riku, he, like, jumps in to save him a little bit and continues on with the concert. But also the fans see this and they start to sympathize with Riku and start cheering him on. Then this whole thing actually makes Iori understand why Kujo called Riku a monster. And that's because of his allure. And while he says this, it's so creepy, and it gave me, like, the chills, because you see, like, the sea of red with everyone calling Riku, and then all of a sudden the voices get louder and louder, and then silence. And I'm just like, ooh, like, that was just very, very bone chilling. And it was impressive. I really, really, really liked that part in this episode as well. And after this, we actually get to hear Iori explain a little bit in further detail what he means. And I really like that Iori was explaining it in, like, super details and just, like, trying to make it understandable for us watching as the audience, but also for Tsumugi, because Tsumugi's also, like, listening in, and she's, he's talking to Tsumugi about this because he had mentioned this to her. And he's basically mentioning how, when they're singing, Riku has his claws hidden, but when he's desperately pleading or attempting to accomplish something, he ends up drawing people in and their emotions. And he gives the example of, like, how Ten is able to give easily and is giving, like, people the performance, their happiness and everything, their dreams. But Riku, on the other hand, basically takes and he controls people's minds and feelings. And he's worried that there's going to be a point where they won't be able to control him and he's just going to let loose. So that's Iori's worry, because Riku, he basically explains that Riku's basically like a black hole. He can suck you in at any time. Which, honestly, the way that he was describing this whole situation sounded really scary, but also it made me understand just the impact that Riku can have and just the damage that he can do with this. So I was like, oh shit. Like, you know, he was making it sound very creepy and scary, but, you know, he knows the damage that can be done and the seriousness of the situation. And funny enough, the fans are also talking about Riku, about what happened at the concert as well. And guess who's overhearing these fans? Kujo. And of course, he has to mention, like, oh, the monster's already taking control of people's hearts. And Kujo actually ends up saying how only tragedy awaits him on this path, and he ends up calling upon like two demon kings, which when he said that, the first one I thought was like, ugh, he's talking about Iori, who's gonna make his wish come true, like the first person. But we also see 10 too, because the funny thing is, like, we see both Iori and 10 that were looking out and there's a storm coming. So to me, I'm just like, uh-oh, like, something bad is gonna happen, isn't it? And we hear Iori, he's conflicted about this. He doesn't want anything bad happening, but at the same time, he's like, but I made him a promise. And then you also have 10 where he's like, I'm gonna keep fighting. I have weapons and allies. And he basically is the cause of Riku's, you know, words and support. So, yeah, so, oh my god. I don't know what to expect in the next week's episode or what's gonna happen in the coming episodes and seasons, because I'm just like, holy crap. And like I said, Idolish7 likes to foreshadow things, so I know for a fact something bad's coming, and I'm not ready for it. I'm not ready, you guys. I'm not ready. Anyways, you guys, so that is everything that I have to say for this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing my overall thoughts, and I hope you guys are staying safe and healthy out there, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!